Hit the restart button. We're right there to recharge those batteries. We're here to help you. Restart, recharge. Restart, recharge.
Aloha and welcome. My name is Katie Ritter.
And I'm Justin Thomas, and this is the Restart Recharge podcast, a podcast by coaches for coaches. We bring you tips and tricks to help you in your everyday work as an instructional technology coach or whatever they call you in your school.
So hopefully you're going to leave this podcast feeling a little less on your own coaching island. And speaking of feeling a little less on your own coaching island, stick around for the end of the episode because we're going to share a little bit more information about the 2-day coaches camp that we are leading, which is specific training for you technology coaches.
So today we want to talk a little bit about getting social. Our title of our episode is Let's Get Social. And what are we talking about with that? Well, we're talking about social media. It's a great way to reach out and connect with people all across the world, really. And the idea for today is we want to talk about some tips for new coaches out there. How do you start to set up your PLN and get things started there? But also for those of you that have already built up your PLN, we want to get some tips and tricks for you on how to kind of maintain that and even take that to the next level. So overall, we want you to be able to develop a better understanding of how to navigate this expansive space of social media and build a larger coach PLN, ultimately equipping you with a virtual social circle to recharge your coaching batteries and get yourself inspired with like-minded people. So we're going to talk about those ideas and tips for coaches that are new to social media, as well as those of you that have that blue check mark next to it. So for today, we want to introduce two of our coaches that are going to be joining in with us today. We have Anna Marie Reinhardt, which we are glad to have back for a second episode today. And for those of you that maybe missed that episode, we'll get you a little bit caught up on what Anna Marie does. She's taught as an intervention specialist for 5 years. She worked with students in grades 1 through 3, 7 through 8, and grade 10. She also taught all 4 content areas and worked with a wide variety of learners. Anna Marie is now a technology integration coach in a PK to 8 building in one of the largest school districts in the state. She was placed in the school after the building was awarded a grant for a 1-to-1 iPad program for their 5th through 8th grade students. Now the teachers and admin, social workers, custodians, related service providers, she's working with all of them as they're all 1-to-1. She supports all of those staff members and students in the building as well. She also supports the special education department in another district through the virtual coaching sessions every other week. Anna Marie is also a Google certified educator, trainer, and coach. So welcome once again, Anna Marie.
All right, thanks, Justin, and welcome, Anna Marie. I'm going to introduce our second guest today, and that is Mallory Kessen. And Mallory has taught middle school English in high school, computer science for 6 years, working in grades 7 through 12 in both rural and urban settings. She is a true believer in learning as an adventure. She completed her quest to become Google Level 1 and 2 certified educator, as well as a Classcraft, Nearpod, and Screencastify certified educator. Mallory is now a technology integration coach with us at Forward Edge, and she is placed in a large public school district in Cincinnati. Outside of coaching, you can find Mallory running the Teaching Gamers YouTube channel, which focuses all the ways that people can teach and learn with games. And you can catch her and the hashtag games4, number 4, Ed, Twitter chat on Thursdays. And I think Mallory's going to get an opportunity to share a little bit more about that with us today as we talk about Let's Get Social. So welcome, Mallory.
All right, so the first question that we want to pose to both of you, let's say you are just starting out as a coach and there are so many different social media platforms out there. There's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's TikTok now. I don't know if you use that at all or not, but what if you're new to social media? Where do you even begin to start as a new coach or as a coach that already has a platform that wants to get a little bit more involved? Where is the starting point for both of you?
I think for me, I would say that if you're brand new to social media, the biggest thing for where I would start is just start small. I think a lot of people start into it going, I have to follow all of these different accounts. I have to do these different chats. I have to do all the different platforms at once. But I think that if you're comfortable with one platform, start with that one platform. Like Justin, you mentioned TikTok, right? If you're on TikTok all day anyway, then why not look at like, teacher TikTok and see what's going on and everything. You don't have to like push yourself to a new platform if you're not ready for that just yet. So I'd say just kind of starting with like just a couple of accounts or starting with what you're comfortable with is probably what I would suggest.
Justin, when you said TikTok, it totally threw me off, but I feel like we were ill prepared and the four of us should have planned like a little TikTok intro dance or something.
We should have. I think I would have
Should
been
do our like pointing and everything.
the easiest one. Start small, right? Start small.
Yeah, I would agree with everything Mallory said, although I feel like I was totally afraid of using social media. Obviously, everybody here on the podcast with us knows, but not maybe our listeners. I didn't even know that I had a Twitter, if I had a Twitter at any point, and it became a very big part of my job and a very fun part of my job. So I kind of feel like sending that first tweet was absolutely terrifying for me. I don't know why. It was like, I was like afraid that something was going to be spelled wrong or it wouldn't make any sense or people wouldn't think it was funny or something. And just like, it was like ripping a Band-Aid off. And now, I love using it. But to me, that was almost doing something that I wasn't comfortable with. And I had to kind of push myself outside of that, like, sure, I use Instagram to post pictures of my dogs and stuff like that, but I'm not a big social media person anyway. So I had to get a little uncomfortable, I think, with using social media at first.
I like that.
Yeah, I love that you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone because it's funny because again, like our team now refers to Anna Marie as like the social media guru, and you really have become very good at it and very clever. But you mentioned that you started off not even knowing that you actually had created a Twitter account at one point. You moved into the role from, being a special ed teacher to now you're a technology coach. And so we need to model. And so let's use Twitter. And you reference that it's now become like a really big and even a fun part of your job. So I guess we'll kind of start with you just because it leads into that, Anna Marie, and then Mallory, if you want to build on, but if you guys just want to talk about like how has social media impacted your role as a coach?
Yeah, so I kind of feel like I'm like the hype person for my placement, and it's really fun too because like you guys said, I'm in a huge school district, right? There are tons of schools, tons of teachers, tons of students in this district, and I just feel like it's a way to amplify the great things that are happening in the building where, maybe like higher level admin, like above the building, they can't get to every building every week or every month or whatever, So I feel like this is a way to highlight all the great things that are happening in the school. And especially like the school that I'm in is small. You could kind of argue that it's rural, even though it's only like 15 minutes from downtown Cincinnati. But I just think people would be really surprised, like pleasantly surprised with a lot of the amazing things that are happening in the building. And so I feel like it's really good for the community and the school district, but I also think it's a really good kind of pat on the back for the teachers and students because the Twitter page for the district and anytime that the school is mentioned, like the feed shows up in the hallway too. So students get to see shout outs, teachers get to see them being shouted out. And I don't know, I think it's just a really good thing for the school culture.
That's great.
I think kind of on my side of things, so far in my first year with coaching, I think one of my main ways that I've seen it impact like what we do is kind of on the opposite side of not just me posting, but the fact that especially in the year of COVID and the year of remote teaching, a lot of teachers have been turning to social media as a way to get any tips, advice. They'll come to me and say, I saw this on YouTube, can you show me how to do it? Or I saw this on Facebook, I want to know how to do that. So it's actually kind of cool in a way because I think that there are a lot of teachers who are getting to see a lot of really cool things and maybe come in to talk to me about things that they might have been nervous to try before, but now they see it and they're pretty excited about it. So that's actually kind of another way that it's impacting it for me.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
They're pushing teachers to use the coach.
Pushing to use the coach.
I love it.
And I really like the idea of having like the view boards that actually have the, the tweets that are piling up, because then that's for something, if there is a teacher that's not really on their social media game, they might just be walking down the hallway and see that and realize, oh, there's some really cool things that, the teacher a floor beneath me has been doing. So I really think that's also a really cool aspect that you have there at your school, Anna Marie.
Yeah, and it does lead to those follow-up conversations. Like Mallory, you were saying that was such a good point that, teachers have been seeing things on Facebook. Like I feel like Bitmoji classrooms took the
Blew up,
world,
yeah.
like took
Yeah.
over, right? Everybody wanted to know how to make one because they saw it on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere else. And I had, tons of appointments just for that one thing. Like, how do I set up a Bitmoji classroom? Where do I find resources? And, Justin, to your point, I have had, teachers come up to me and say like, oh, I saw that, so-and-so created a really cool, like Frere model in Google Slides, and they color coded it and they had all these cool fonts. Can you show me how to do that? And so it does definitely lead to like follow-up conversations and more appointments for us as well too.
That's awesome. And quick question for you both, before we get into this next question here, but where do each of you spend most of your time, like for education purposes? Like which social media platforms are you on most?
For me, it's Twitter is my biggest one for my PLN. That's one that I've had since 2014, 2015 that I've been just all about. But my other two big ones, Facebook is growing for me because there's a lot of just like teacher resource sharing. And since my teachers were doing it, I kind of wanted to see like, what are they seeing out there? And then YouTube is my other big one because of my channel and everything. That's because that's where I'm posting that information. And there's so many different tutorials and talks and things like that it's just a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I would say Twitter is definitely where I spend most of my time. Actually, I feel like my answer is very similar to Mallory's, minus I do not have a YouTube channel, nor will I probably ever. But yeah, right. But I think that, one of the examples of kind of the Facebook aspect of it is the district that I'm in, they adopted like several new curriculums last year. And one of which was this language arts curriculum that the teachers were kind of struggling with. They just felt like they needed more resources, or maybe like a couple of different looking resources. They were trying to change it up and keep things engaging for their students, which is awesome. And so one of the places where I pointed them to, I said, try joining one of the Facebook groups for that curriculum. And there have been so many resources that have been shared there, like teacher created, free ones that other people found. And it's just like a really good way to crowdsource materials and ideas.
Wow. Okay.
That's really awesome. Now, kind of a lead into question that we talked a little bit about Facebook and Twitter here, and some of those other social media platforms, but what are your top 5 must follow accounts that you have found as you have transitioned into your coaching role? So a couple examples out there. Obviously, you have your hashtag Google EC. You have your ISTE Coaches, EdTech Coaches Network, which is at EdTech Coaches. You also have the hashtag ET Coaches. One with Facebook that actually one of our colleagues, Tracee, introduced me to was the Global Educator Collective, where there's just educators all across the world that are just kind of helping discuss what was happening during COVID times and things like that. But overall, what would you say your top 5 must follow accounts are?
So this one was really hard for me to narrow down, actually. I mean, spoiler alert, they told us this question was coming so we could prepare. It was hard for me to come up with this because I feel like it's cheesy to say, but everyone on our team I love to follow. So like we won't count them in my top 5, even though they would be like my top, 15. But I would say Eric Kurtz from like Control Alt Achieve, he puts out some really, really great, blog posts, articles, templates, all kinds of free resources. I would say Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook is another really good one. Tons of great resources available through him. And then Shake Up Learning, Casey Bell, she, especially after, looking at all of her kind of like Google training resources and things like that, that she puts out for teachers, I think she's a great resource. And Joe Sanfilippo is one of my favorites.
Go Crickets.
Yes, we were lucky enough to have him as a speaker at one of our Forward Edge events last year, and he was just so great. And like, I don't know, I just find him to be like a really inspirational person. And I don't know, if you don't know about him, you should look him up because he is, I think, awesome and just has a lot of really great things to say about education. So I would say those are my top ones. I think that was 5.
Those were some good 5. That was a
Enough
good
to
starting
top
5.
I think for me, like I second everything that Anna Marie said, but I'll try to add on a little bit to it. One of my hashtags that I use on Twitter all the time is just hashtag teacher Twitter. Just it's simple, but it like gets a lot of different people in there. And so it's kind of nice to even just follow that hashtag and see what everyone's saying. And then for me, a lot of the accounts and a lot of the hashtags that I tend to follow, a lot of them focus on games and education because that's one of my like areas of passion. So I have the hashtag games for ed, and that's number 4 that I follow. And that's a really great one for anything that you want that's game-based learning or gamification, any aspect of how games could be involved, they cover it. And then same with following hashtag game-based learning. And then another site that I really like to follow the account for is Games for Change, because what they do is they focus on how we can use games in a way that teaches people, in a way that inspires young people. And they have some really amazing design challenges for students as well. So they're really trying to help put the spin on students being able to be designers and creators. And then I have to say that since it's my my district's hashtag, the hashtag Viking Diff is one that's very specific to the district I work for. But it's been huge in terms of like how we promote like our culture and everything. So that's a must follow for us.
Awesome. Yeah, I will add one. Justin, you mentioned it, but the ET coaches hashtag from ISTE's EdTech Coaches PLN. You don't have to be a member of ISTE to participate, but they do a Twitter chat at the end of every month. And for me, when I would like a specific coaching resource, like when I was a brand new coach, I participated in those chats religiously, just because I was, there's so many great resources out there for like tech tools and tips and like different niches. Mallory, you mentioned some game-based learning, which is awesome. Like we as tech coaches know we need to know all of these things. But for me, when I was looking for specific, like help me be a coach, that Twitter chat was always super helpful. So I would just throw that one in. And I don't want to say the wrong date, but I think it's the last Tuesday of every month. Anna Marie, do you know? Oh no, you smiled. I thought maybe you might know, and I was saying it wrong. So we'll link everything that these guys have said, and I'll figure out what the right date and time is in the show notes for our podcast. But you can look it up using the hashtag ET coaches. But that was a great one for like specific coaching resources I want to throw in.
Oh, for sure. And I even would argue that you could even start to follow some of the area schools in your region and just see what schools that are, kind of like-minded in the same location are kind of putting out there. And maybe that gets you some ideas and inspiration to take to your school. And if you're putting stuff out there as well on social media and they start to follow you, maybe that will also maybe create some connections, some, cross district collaboratives, maybe perhaps. So I would even just reach out and say you could do that as well. I don't know what the area schools are in your district where you're listening, but go for it.
Yeah, that's great tip.
And with that, I think we will talk a little bit more about getting yourself socialized on your social media after this momentary break from our sponsor for the podcast. Looking for a program that reaches all teachers in learning new tools to integrate in their lessons? Edu Badges is the answer. Edu is an anytime, anywhere badging program that is designed to take bite-sized tools for instruction and teach teachers how to use them. Edu has received the ISTE Seal of Alignment for educator standards, and each badge in our expanding library is aligned to the ISTE standards and the SAMR model. Learn more about the program that teachers call addicting at forward-edge.net/edubadges.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around for our short little sponsor break. We are here with Anna Marie Reinhardt and Mallory Kessen talking about getting social and how coaches can use social media for their advantage to better their practice and to help the teachers and educators that we serve. So we've talked a little bit about some of the social media platforms that we're on and some of the great accounts that we follow to get some resources and kind of what it has done for us in our coaching practice. And with all of that being said, social media is going really fast. And I know sometimes, especially for myself, like when I have a lot going on in the world, it can feel really hard to keep up with sometimes. But I know like when I do have a chance to sit down, I almost always walk away with a great idea that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do that, or we need to do that, or I need to implement that. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, because it's out of sight, out of mind. But I'm just wondering maybe what tips you guys have in how you take, what you see on social media and make sure it gets implemented. I'll just share one thing that I've done in the past. And that is when I had a little bit more time to participate in Twitter chats a little bit more frequently. Like I mentioned, I participated in ET coaches pretty religiously. I would always try to write up a quick blog post afterward. And like any tweet that I had liked or was really like, this is a wonderful idea, I would include it in the blog post. And one, give the people credit for like sharing the idea, but two, it was a way for me to go back and reference once I had the time and had the headspace to like, okay, what was it that I got out of that chat that I want to like take back to implement with my teachers. So that was one strategy I used, but I'm just wondering like, how do you tackle all of the things coming at you and actually make sure that what you're seeing gets implemented and it isn't just like fun time wasted on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever else is out there?
Right now I send out a weekly summary email we tried a couple of things out. I used to do a s'more and it was like really, really nice. And it took me forever to put it together because I was putting all kinds of images and, like working with the different layouts. But I just felt like it was almost like too much information to give people. And so then it was pretty easy to like look at it and then be like, I don't have time to read all that. Right. Like, and that was totally my bad. But I feel like these like weekly summaries are better. And that is a great opportunity for me to kind of feature things that I have seen on Twitter, kind of like tease it a little bit and be like, if you're interested in making something like this, totally reach out to me, or like, let's set up a time. And anytime I can include a visual with that, I just feel like, taking a screenshot of the tweet or taking a screenshot of whatever it was that teacher created, again, making sure to give them credit for that. I think that just helps kind of draw everyone's attention back to what it is, I'm trying to tell them about. And I have gotten a lot of great responses doing it that way. And people are, reading these smaller kind of like bite-sized emails and walking away wanting to learn whatever it is I've shown them in the email. So that's been helpful for me.
I love that.
I actually have a pretty similar experience with Anna Marie, where it was actually like you were telling your story and I'm sitting here like, yeah, like I'm going through that right now. I had like the monthly newsletter I was sending out and everything, and it was beautiful, not really as well read. And so I actually started just including like a little tech tip of something I picked up or something that I heard a lot of people asking about in our Tuesday tech updates. So everyone in the district knows that on Tuesday, they're going to get a tech update from me. And so I would include a tip in there and that would help out. And I think the other thing too that I've done in terms of implementing things is that if I see that someone says something cool, like Katie, you mentioned, if someone had a great idea in a Twitter chat, I'll reply back to them or I'll reach back out and say, hey, can you talk to me more about how you did this? And just ask them like more questions about it. Because part of what that I think does is that, like you're saying, like on social media, everything can fly by, and especially in a Twitter chat, everything can just fly by real fast. So taking that time, I think, to just reach out and say, hey, can I talk to you about more of what you did, helps like us kind of see how it can be implemented. And it also kind of helps deepen that relationship too with, the person you're talking to, that it's more than just we've liked it, we replied to it, but we're having an actual conversation about it now. So that's another thing I think that can help out.
I love that so much. Are you having are you just typically if you do that, are you like just corresponding with direct message, or do you exchange email, or do you hop on a video chat, or what does
Yes.
that lead to?
Yeah,
all of the above.
Yeah, it depends on the situation. I've had some cases where it actually start off as a Twitter chat, and then we'll like be direct messaging, or then it'll turn into, we talk about collaborating on something, or we'll talk about how could like we implement this in like our school or in our district or things like that. But so it depends. Sometimes it's become video call, and that's actually how the Games for Ed Twitter chat started. Was there were a bunch of us who were interested in game-based learning, but we didn't really have a spot where we could talk about it. And so we started with direct messaging and then hopped on a video call and said, hey, let's get this Twitter chat started. That was 6 years ago, I think. Yeah.
I love
Very
that.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So obviously you don't have any imposter syndrome on jumping right into social media, but let's say that you are, you've been on Twitter for a while, you're following all these different accounts, and you're just kind of, browsing, and you're just kind of taking it in. But how do you take that next step to get rid of that imposter syndrome and actually jump in, dive right in, start to join in these Twitter chats and these conversations, and reach out to other coaches and educators?
I mean, I think one great way is to do exactly what Mallory just said, like send a direct message to continue that conversation or get more information. But I will also admit I'm totally guilty of being the person that likes and retweets and maybe doesn't always comment, like, because maybe I just have a couple of minutes and I'm trying to get through, everything that I feel like I've missed for the day. But in terms of like deciding that you're going to join a Twitter chat or host a Twitter chat, you just have to do it. I feel like with me, it's just like, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off, like carve that time off, like set it aside on your calendar, because, a lot of times those happen like in the evenings. And so it's, I think, easy if you don't have it, written down somewhere or plugged into your phone or something to forget. And they really are worthwhile to participate in. And I think one of the biggest kind of takeaways from the Twitter chats that I've participated in or hosted, it's just the connections that you make with people. Even if you're not walking away with like, 15 brand new ideas that you've never heard of. I mean, maybe you are, but also maybe you're just walking away with like a couple of new points of contact or people that are going to be part of your PLN. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like just going for it, giving it a shot, like, is kind of the best way to do it. I don't know, Mallory, do you have any like better
Yeah,
advice?
because I was about to jump in, and when Justin was like, you probably don't deal with imposter syndrome, I deal with it daily. Anytime I work on a YouTube video, anytime I post my YouTube video, every single time I'm like, okay, but is it good enough? Like, what if they don't like it? What if I 100% back Anna Marie on that. It just comes down to doing it. And I know it sounds like, because I was in this situation, especially for YouTube, where my face is on screen in addition to my words being said and everything. Every time I heard people say, you just got to get the first video done. You just got to get the first, and same with Twitter, you just got to get the first tweet out there. You just got to get the first one done, rip the Band-Aid off. Every time I heard that, I thought, no, there must be some other secret. It really is just that. It really is just getting that first one out there. My first YouTube video, I have nothing but glare in my glasses, and like it just shines the entire time. And honestly, that's okay. Like it's, like I said, first video and everything, you learn from it. If your first tweet doesn't get a ton of responses and like it doesn't become the most viral thing, fine. It's okay. So I think it's just taking it bit by bit and everything. And trusting that you're with your own experience, you have something valuable to add too. Everybody has something valuable to add. That's part of what's beautiful with social media, is that we all have some pretty valuable and different insights into things. So just trusting your gut on that. And yeah, like Anne-Marie said, get it done. I'm almost up to 10 videos now, and I still feel that way every single video.
Yeah, I love that. That was such great advice. And I do feel like everyone, especially when you first start, like we're all nervous to send that first thing. I remember the first blog post I published, I was like, I'm not telling anybody I'm starting a blog. Like, I don't want anyone to find it and read it. Like, let me figure out what I'm doing for a little while first. And, like I still get nervous to even submit for a conference presentation. I'm like, what do I know that other people don't know? So I just, we all have it. I love that you girls are just giving somebody the encouragement. So hopefully somebody listening who hasn't, dove in is going to be able to contribute. And, I recently, I was talking with some coaches, and kind of the same thing was being talked about a little bit, and they referenced that sometimes because social media is going so fast, like if you don't have your phone open looking at it, someone else sees it first and they respond. So like, why would I respond? But Mallory, to your point, I love that you said, we all have something to contribute. And so not that we just want to create this like huge echo chamber, but I just think like we do have something to contribute. And I just think about the conversations we have on our team, and it's like, yeah, I've done that, and this is the slight way I tweaked it. That leads to the next person tweaking it in this way, and the next person doing this. And suddenly we have a brand new idea, like eventually. So I would just add, like, even if you feel like you're kind of saying the same thing, like maybe even just to like acknowledge that, yes, that's a good idea, to give somebody that extra push to go with it, or, like adding your one other insight to it, like can really help along the way. So I think that's great.
I'll even chime in too. There was a time when, I was looking at just on scrolling on Twitter, and then there was a Twitter chat, and it's like, oh, it sounds kind of interesting. So, I was like, what the heck? I'll say something. I was thinking as I like sent it, I was like, the wording's kind of weird. I don't even know if that makes sense. And then I like put it down and went and got a snack or something, came back, and there was like 7 people had already liked it in the instant. People were commenting. So, I mean, people really do in these Twitter chats. I mean, it really is a great way to build a network, and people start to, just reach out there and talk to you. And for the most part, in every experience I've had, most people are always like, oh, that's a really cool idea. Or like, how did you do that? So I think it's really cool of just how everyone is in an education universe, in a coaching universe, really does look out for each other and really talk about these awesome ideas.
Yeah. Okay, so thinking about people who have maybe been on social media for a little bit, and I know that we are referencing Twitter a lot, but I think that's, you two said at the beginning, I think Justin and I would agree, like we are also each in Twitter more than any other social media space for education purposes. So a lot of what we're saying applies beyond Twitter, but sorry if we keep referencing that and you live primarily on Facebook or something. But so just thinking about, so someone who's been in the social media spaces for a while, they've sent that first tweet, they've sent a lot of tweets. What's maybe the next step for somebody who's like just comfortable with like scrolling, reading, liking things, reposting, retweeting, commenting back? Like what advice would you give to the user that's maybe ready to push social media a little bit more to get something out of it?
I guess I would say, again, like we're talking about Twitter again, but I mean, participating in a Twitter chat is kind of, I feel like, the first step, but then trying to lead one, which again was kind of a scary thing. But it's not as bad as anybody thinks. And again, the connections that you make there, I think, are really great. But I kind of feel like that's really the next step is, participating in kind of a larger group discussion on Twitter, and then maybe even trying your hand at hosting one, because it can be really cool.
Yeah, and Anna Marie, if I can ask a quick follow-up question, you hosted your first Twitter chat this school year, and so how did that come about? Like, did you just say, "Hey, I'm gonna host a Twitter chat, follow along," or like how did that go about for someone who is maybe interested in hosting a Twitter chat? Like, how might they do that?
So this was through hashtag ET coaches. So actually, Katie, you shared a resource with us, and they were like, they need people to host, and you just happened to be in the know. And so it was like, all right, let's go for it. Developing a topic, I think, is always, it can be kind of tricky. Some people, I think it just comes really naturally to them, like, the questions that they need to ask and the topic that they need to cover. But for me, I think kind of listening to the chatter in the hallways of school, listening, to kind of things that teachers are struggling with is what gives me ideas for the questions that I want to ask. Because then what would be amazing is if I get a lot of really great responses, then I can take those back to my building and the teachers that I'm working with and say, like, I know this is stressing everybody out. Like, here are some ideas that I crowdsourced from people all over the world, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
I think too that when you're thinking about like what you want to host or what you'd want to talk about, or anything like that, one thing that's been big for me is think about what you're passionate about. Like for me, games, hands down. I love the way that we can learn from play. I love the way we can get to learn from different games, have students design those kinds of experiences, things like that. So that is my jam. And that's something that I get really excited and like worked up about getting to talk about. So, you know, will I ever host a Twitter chat about some of the topics I'm maybe not passionate about? It's not as likely. So if you're trying to figure out where to get started, maybe think about what your love is. So my knack is game-based learning. Maybe somebody else's is social emotional learning. Maybe somebody else really digs getting to learn using with TikTok. Maybe it's that you want to work on math education, whatever it may be, but kind of thinking about what your passion is too, and using that as a way, like, what is it, the divining rod, the thing where you can like go figure out where you want to go. So using it as your little divining rod of social media.
I love it. And I just learned something else too. I had no idea what that was.
So you learn a little bit about everything here on the Restart Recharge.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep with this idea of leading a Twitter chat. I mean, both kind of led into it. Obviously, doing something that you are passionate about is really important, but how do you come up with this topic or questions, but probably more with the questions along with your topic? You got your topic, but how do you kind of design those questions? And I think a key thing too is how do you market it to get people out there? I know I've stumbled upon a lot of just Twitter chats that I had no idea were even happening, but I just happened to see it from other educators and coaches that I follow. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll jump into this. But how do you kind of get that ball rolling so people know about it and kind of schedule it into their schedule? And then how do you keep people engaged with it, managing that flow? And overall, what happens if it's just dead silence, just crickets out there? Like what happens if no one's kind of tuning in? What are some strategies that you kind of go through with all those steps there?
So I think that for me, when it comes to coming up with a topic or questions, one thing that we would usually do for Games for Ed was that usually it wasn't just one person hosting, we had co-hosts. And so even finding ways like where we could bounce it off of each other and go, okay, we want to talk about this aspect of game-based learning on how it can help promote collaboration. Now, how else can we see that in the classroom? So we would kind of take a look at maybe even asking teachers, what are you currently doing? Or like what in a perfect world, what would you want to be doing? Any limitations they typically see. So kind of looking at how we could practically apply it. It helped too with having, you know, that co-host that we could kind of bounce off each other and see what everyone's experiences are and see if anyone has something a little bit different in terms of what we want to ask. And in terms of marketing and everything, I think I would text my teacher friends every week that we had it going on and just be like, hey, by the way, don't forget this is here. Hey, if you can even just share it, that would be great. So a little bit of a grassroots campaign on that front.
Shameless plugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in terms of promoting it, I feel like, you know, anytime there's an image associated with a tweet, it just gets more like traction. I think especially with Twitter chats too, because they are moving so fast, if you're not like right there on it, it can be easy to miss a question if there's nothing really making it stand out, right? So like if it's just text, it's really easy to kind of, it gets lost in the shuffle. So even just, you know, making a graphic in like Canva or something that has the question that you're asking just bigger and maybe in a little bit more color, I feel like definitely helps it stand out. And that's also a great way to create marketing materials to kind of like tease what's coming. But then I also agree with Mallory, like having a co-host or someone to, you know, do that with, especially if that's maybe something that you're a little bit nervous about, getting a fellow coach or a teacher or somebody who wants to host one with you, I think is a great idea and a great way to kind of get started and just take the edge off a little bit.
What would you say for marketing? You talked about those images. What would you say like the products that you use, the programs you use most likely, or like is it Canva or is it something else that you're creating these images for?
Yeah, I definitely use Canva. I think it's like just one of the best. Even if you just have the free version, there's so many free templates and I don't know, it just looks very professional and like polished.
I use Canva for all of my YouTube stuff. All of my intro cards, outro cards, Instagram posts, Twitter posts. And what's cool about it too is that they have so many different templates that cover so many different types of social media that, I mean, even if you're like, I don't even know what I need, you just type in the name of the platform you're using and it pops up with every template you could need. So that's hands down the biggest one that I use too. Yeah.
I think that's really good, especially because that image, I mean, that works for me. I mean, it's like they're marketing to me. They know they're in my head. But if I'm scrolling through and I see an image, I usually just, I'm like, oh, what's this image of? And then I realize, oh, there's like a Twitter chat or something like that. Or if it's like an update for something that I'm following that's completely different. So I really think that that's a really good pointer to drop in with those images, because I think people just naturally see something that's a little different than just the text and they want to check out what's going on.
Yeah, so how would you handle that last part of Justin's question? What advice would you give somebody like, hey, you've spent the time preparing, you've marketed it, and for whatever reason, probably nothing you did, it's just kind of crickets. No chirps going on for your Twitter notifications. Just nobody's kind of there and participating. What would you say?
I think for me, part of what we've done before is I would say still go through with the Twitter chat. Like I wouldn't, give up part way. Just because we've all had it and kind of like Anne-Marie hit on before, they happen in the evening typically. So it may be someone's just wrapping up dinner and they're on their way to join it, or it may be that they're just running late from trying to get something done. So even if it's, you're answering your questions and tweeting it out there and everything, I think that's still really worthwhile. And hey, if you can quickly text a teacher friend and be like, hey, can you like follow along with us or help promote it too? That can even help with just getting even like a couple responses out there. Because even when we've had, quieter Twitter chat nights and everything, there's still always pretty good stuff going on.
Yeah, I would agree. Just even though you may feel a little funny or awkward or something, even though like nobody's looking at you, like, you don't need to feel bad about it. Just like stick it out. I mean, I've definitely been there. I haven't hosted all that many yet, but one of the ones that I did, I mean, I think there were like 3 people who were like participating, and I was kind of like, oh, that's a little bit of a bummer, especially because I thought the topic was great. But again, I think the timing of it, like, I mean, I'm totally guilty of wanting to put technology away at the end of the day and not, engage in any more, because it does sometimes feel a little bit like work, and that's just how it goes. But yeah, I would say don't take it personally. And it probably has everything to do with the fact that people are like done with their computer for the day, maybe putting their phone away, maybe doing some laundry, making dinner, all that stuff in the evening. So just stick it out and don't take it personally.
I would even say too, the fact of the matter is it stays up there. It's not like it just disappears after a certain amount of time. So maybe there's someone that is browsing through and sees it, maybe even a couple hours after the fact, and maybe comments in, or even just sees it and says, oh, what if this is a weekly thing? And then they tune in the next time. So, I do like that, to just keep powering through, right? Just keep powering through, even if it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people joining. The fact of the matter is someone is still getting something out of it in the end.
Well, and I've even seen that as a content creator, that there are times where I'll post videos and nothing, like not comments, no like nothing for a little bit. And it's, it's weird, it's awkward at first and everything, but you just shrug it off. And then you never know, there could come a time when someone is asking about that topic or they're interested in it, and you have a chance to get to talk about it or share like what your thoughts were. Say, hey, did you know we're doing this Twitter chat, or things like that? Or like I can share, hey, there's a video I did that was about this. So yeah, it is sometimes too just about timing.
I love that. I love your guys' encouragement, because I feel like if I could have used that, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years ago, I think was when I was invited to host my first Twitter chat. And I was so excited. I was so nervous for like a week leading up to it. And then finally I'm here, I'm hosting, and I posted the first question, and the person who like normally was the host wasn't there. And no one was there and no one responded to anything. And finally they contacted me like halfway through, and kind of like a family emergency had come up, which is why I hadn't heard from them, but it was sort of a bust and it didn't happen. So I could have used that encouragement then, because I was like so embarrassed, which, like you said, Anna Maria, is so silly. Like, you have no reason to, like, no one's looking at me. No one even knew I was doing it or not doing it. But I think we like really internalize those things maybe more than we should. So I love the positive words of encouragement, and younger me could have used them years ago. um Thinking a little bit, and you guys touched on it a little bit at the beginning, and I was so happy to hear that like teachers are using social media and bringing ideas to you. It sounds like maybe they're spending a lot more time on Facebook. I don't know, maybe because they're like already on Facebook. And so they happen to see it, which is really cool to get it in front of them. But what are maybe some ways that you have encouraged teachers to get on social media? And if you have, like, where have you found successes with that?
I think probably kind of the best way for me to sell anything, whether it's like meeting with me or, joining Twitter, is just framing it as like, this could make your life easier. Like, this could make your life easier. There is a very good chance you're going to find something that somebody has already created that you can, like we say, harvest or, try and recreate on your own. And I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the best way to frame it, is like, because I think a lot of people think that, there's not necessarily always positive connotations around social media, right? And so I think just also reminding them, like, you can follow whoever you want, you can unfollow whoever you want. And if you just want it to be like a teacher education thing, it can be that. Like, it really can. So I think that's especially like for, some of the more veteran teachers that I've worked with, they're not that interested in Twitter because they hear about Twitter on the news or, something like that. And so they're like, why would I join that? And so I think just like reminding them that it can be whatever they want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're likely going to find something super useful, probably a lot of things that are super useful on there. And if nothing else, say this is a way to brag about your students too, I think is a great way to frame it.
I love it.
I liked your point, Anne Marie, about, that it really can be whatever you want it to be. I've told a number of my teachers when we're talking of like, when we were having to do recordings for lessons or things like that, that what's nice with YouTube is that you can make it unlisted, so you can still share it with people. But as I would tell my teachers, you don't have to be the next YouTube star. You don't have to, you don't have to be the next YouTube star. You don't have to worry about Joe Schmo in Nebraska finding your video if you don't want them to. If you want to keep it something that's more of like your connected community, cool. I think something too that helps out with our district is that Twitter especially is pretty ingrained into, teachers sharing out what they're doing, administrators, coaches sharing out what they're doing. So much so that our superintendent in the new teachers meeting at the start of the year, one of the first things he talked about was the hashtag Viking Diff, the hashtag that we use for like everything that's related to our district. And it's cool because it's used really as a way to promote like what the students are doing and what the teachers are doing that are positive. And it's all about making that difference as a Viking. So that Viking Diff. So I think that it's something too that's kind of come to be recognized as like a little bit of a point of pride for us. So I think that's something that's helped out as well, is being able to kind of use it and show it. So whether it's they're just starting off or they, kind of get closer to where we are, where it's been used for a while and that's kind of something that's expected, can definitely be pretty nice. It can be a pretty nice way to get some acknowledgement and some kudos for what people are doing.
I love it. So I think like coaches can walk away, target your admin, right? Like get them caring about it. So maybe it's a good time to set up a meeting with your admin if they're not on Twitter, to get them to understand what the really good things are. And, if you have a school district hashtag, I know some coaching teams out there actually have a hashtag for their coaching team. Like make sure it's everywhere so that people can see it and access it. That's awesome. I know one tip that I will add from what I used to do is always like, and you can still do it, like copy a link directly to the tweet. And I would either just like email it directly from Twitter or put it in an email to like the science department. Hey, I saw this, on Twitter. I really thought you guys would be interested in this. We were just talking about, XYZ, like this would solve your problem, or, something to like get it in front of them so that or I always would talk to teachers too, like, hey, I saw this idea in a Twitter chat last night. And so anytime I found something from like whatever social media it was, I would reference like that I found this from that social media platform. So to your point, Anna Marie, people who have these like negative connotations with it, they would see, oh, there is more like good things going on that I could find there.
And I'll even share a quick story with something that came up. I was actually shadowing Tyler at a school that he works with, and I was talking to a teacher, and I mentioned what school that I'm with, and she was like, "Oh, I know so-and-so over there." And so I went back to my school and talked to her about it. And actually, funny story, it turned out that she had happened to just see her stuff like on Instagram, and then it reached out to ask her about something, and now they're really good friends through that network. So you can even encourage teachers to, hey, get on Instagram and you can follow other teachers, make those connections, and you maybe make some good friendships out of it too.
Love it.
So we talked a little bit at the beginning about this, the idea that social media is this kind of giant ocean. How do you kind of navigate through this? Like with your experiences as a coach, how do you help new users or users that are kind of been on it and almost feel like it's getting kind of stale? How do you really kind of help coaches go through, or teachers in this way? How do you kind of help them with their experience through social media, whether it's as a new coach or as someone that has been out there and it feels like it's just kind of the same material?
So I'm actually kind of going through that right now with just things like personal life being kind of crazy right now and things like that. And like I'm in the middle of moving, and at the start of working on the move, I felt so much pressure to like keep posting, keep checking things, keep looking at stuff. And honestly, it really comes down to just realizing that like it's okay to take a break and just allowing yourself that grace. Like whether like even if it's that you're like, oh, but I'm supposed to be hosting this Twitter chat every other week and I need to make sure I do that. Or in my case, it's I post videos weekly. I need to make sure I do that. And just allowing yourself that grace that, you know what, if you need to take a break and be okay with that. Because I think that when you feel like you need a break, but you keep pushing yourself to check every Twitter chat, be involved every single night, post every single day, like that kind of stuff, you just kind of ultimately burn yourself out. So allow yourself that grace to take a break, allow that you can even, if you want to, like let people know like, hey, I'm going to be back into the Twitter chat next week, but I just need a break tonight because I have a ton of grading to do. Teachers will totally get it. The other coaches you work with will totally get it. So just kind of allowing yourself that grace is probably the biggest thing that I would say to teachers, coaches, and reiterate to myself.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Mallory. And then I would also piggyback off of that and think, so maybe you're feeling burnt out on Twitter or something, like maybe explore one of the other platforms, like switch it up. And because I think it can be kind of hard to like find new accounts to follow. If you're getting burnt out on Twitter, you've likely been using it for a minute. And just finding new content could be hard. So maybe start exploring some of those hashtags on Instagram, see if you find anything there. And joining some of those Facebook groups, because I agree with what Mallory and then Katie, you said it again. I do feel like that's where most of like the teachers that I'm working with are finding their stuff is on Facebook. So like, if you find you're getting burnt out, definitely first and foremost, take a break. It's okay to step away, like Mallory said, but then maybe consider switching it up and looking to one of the other platforms for some resources and connections.
Great advice, ladies. So our last question for you here today, it's kind of a two-parter, but beyond social media, what other avenues are you exploring to grow your coaching PLN?
I feel like all of the Google certifications is definitely a way to do that, because you're immediately like lumped into a group of people who care about education and want to make it better. And I mean, talk about like a global PLN, that for sure checks that box. I think that, you know, taking opportunities like stepping up to host something or maybe volunteering to be on like a board of some, I mean, these are like bigger things, but I think they definitely, you know, lead to more opportunities and different ways to grow yourself as a coach and find new resources for your teachers. I know I'm lucky enough that in the building where I'm in, because of the grant that they have, you know, I've been able to apply to be a mentor coach. I mentored teachers in New York City this past year during the pandemic, which was pretty wild. And hopefully I'll get to do the same next year with potentially, you know, the same city or a different crew. But I don't know. I feel like it's taking those opportunities that may sound a little scary or a little intimidating and just kind of going for it, whether it's something as small as participating in a Twitter chat or stepping up to volunteer for, you know, something like a mentor position. I just think those are really great ways to grow yourself and meet other people.
I think I'd add on to that for me, a couple things that I've seen have been some of the conferences that I go to, whether virtual or in person. I think that's been a good way to get to build on my PLN, that I get to sometimes reconnect with people that maybe I haven't talked to in a while. And so we get to kind of strengthen that connection that was there, but then they're also talking about people they know, or I'm getting to see new people in sessions or things like that. So that's been something that's been kind of nice for me. As well as, and this is going to be maybe a little weird one, because it's not quite social media, but sometimes even just in the forums of different tech tools that I use, just getting to see what people are posting. One of the big ones for me was always Classcraft. Their forums were super active all the time. And so you'd get teachers posting about different ideas of things they're using, people asking questions and places where you could respond to it. So while it's maybe not as full-fledged as like a social media platform, it was also still a really great spot to get to connect with people who were interested in similar things or had questions, and things even that I could kind of help out with. So even if it's that you're helping out in a scenario where it's not posting to the wide world, maybe you can help post to the people who have questions about Classcraft, Screencastify, whatever, you know, Nearpod, whatever it may be.
I love that. Great tips, ladies. And I like how both of them kind of led to this idea of maybe kind of forming these little smaller communities in some way, or like reaching out in face-to-face. You know, and Mallory, you touched on it a little bit earlier, like in the Twitter chats or on Facebook or wherever, if you see something that you really like, reaching out like, hey, can we talk more about this? So I just think that is a super important piece, that, you know, that we just don't want to lose, like those opportunities. So I love that you guys kind of each in your own way sort of alluded to that. Any like advice that you might give to someone beyond the obvious of just like reaching out, to form those like smaller, more personal connections?
This is, okay, it's going to kind of relate to reaching out, but just advice I have like around that. Just the worst they can say is no. The worst they can say is no. The worst that happens is you don't get a response. And I think that's a big one, because I've used that as a way to connect with, whether it's like as a teacher, it was connecting with trying to find authors who would come talk to my class, or reaching out to business community members. Even in the game-based learning I do, I would reach out to game developers and ask them, do you have advice for my students? What can you, like, would you ever want to talk to my students about games? Things like that. The worst that happens is they say no, or you don't get a response, which in the grand scheme of things isn't so bad. So I would say just kind of keeping that in mind. If you really like someone's ideas, if you're really interested in getting to connect with them or talk more, and you have maybe some of that imposter syndrome we were talking about earlier, just keep in mind the worst that happens is they say no, or you don't get a response. That's it.
And let's be honest too, most people that are putting stuff out there on social media want it to be seen, right? So they'd probably be more than happy to be talking a little bit more with you about it.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you know, the best thing that could happen is maybe you end up with like another person kind of in your corner who you can go to and, you know, or connect them with one of your teachers. You know, it's like, it's similar to the crickets on the Twitter chat. Like, it'll be okay. Like, you know, if they don't respond to you or whatever, it'll be okay. But maybe something really cool could happen with just that like one little message or that one little attempt at reaching out.
And kind of building on that, Anna Marie, I actually have a little bit of that happening now. There was a game that I posted about, and that was one that I had recommended to a teacher who was talking about African American history and wanted to do something for Black History Month. And the game developer is a Black female game developer. So I reached out and just said, hey, just throwing this out here. I reviewed your game, and it's kind of expected I wasn't going to hear anything. Not only did she watch it, but she like retweeted it and shared it with her friends. And she talked about like, I can't believe that this is actually making a difference for teachers and students, or that it could. So I'm kind of working on trying to reach out to her and say like, hey, would you be interested in maybe talking to this class about it? Like, I have a teacher who really wants to use your game with her students. So I didn't think that was going to happen. But it definitely is kind of an example of like really great things can happen, and the benefits definitely outweigh those risks.
I love it. I love it. And the good news is that when it comes to like education, and especially for reaching out to other coaches to try to network, like educators generally just want to help people. So you seem a much better shot with them than maybe other groups and getting a good response. So that's awesome. Well, ladies, those are all the questions that we have for you. Thank you again so much to Anna Marie Reinhardt and Mallory Kessen for joining us here on our podcast today, sharing all of their tips on how you can use social media to impact your coaching practice and help the educators that you serve. So ladies, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
So just a little bit more information that I promised you at the beginning about the Forward Edge Coaches Camp, which is a 2-day immersive training specifically for technology integration coaches. And those, we are the ultimate PD providers, right? And we need our own PD. Gosh darn it, it's time that we get some PD around here. And so please join us for Coaches Camp on June 16th and 17th. It will be hosted in person in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we will be actually running it as a hybrid version. So if you cannot travel yet and you don't live nearby, you can actually tune in virtually. Spots are limited. We have a total of 20 participants, and spots are already filling up. So please, if you're interested, do reach out. In this 2-day experience, we are going to be doing a deep dive to help you clarify your role as a coach and get into how you can market yourself so your calendar is full all year long. We will deep dive into how you can deploy and guide teachers through coaching cycles to make really deep transformative changes across your district. And then also how to plan really engaging and impactful professional learning for the educators that you serve, and much more in these 2 jam-packed days. So if you'd like more information on our coaches camp that we'll be hosting this summer, you can visit our website at forward-edge.net/coach camp. That's forward-edge.net/coach camp.
And I just want to point out that this was something that I got the chance to go through. And when I started as a coach, I actually started mid-year. So I was kind of tossed in there and started kind of going through some things. And, you think you kind of know what's going on. And then out of nowhere, bam, COVID hit. And then I was like, oh, I really hope that I'm doing a good job supporting these teachers. So then when we started this coaches camp, I was able to kind of jump in there and kind of get some really cool tips and ideas. And it was a cool experience for me because I had been a coach already for about half a year, and probably the most unprecedented time to be a coach of all time. But it was just kind of a reaffirmation. A lot of things that I was doing some really good ideas and strategies. And those things I was doing was kind of a reaffirmation that what I was doing was the right type of thing. I was going through my coaching role with some good ideas, but also learned a lot of other really great tips and strategies that I could then use as a coach for this year moving into it. So I think this is a really good opportunity, and I highly suggest that you, whether you can make it face-to-face, we like to see people in 3D, as Anna Marie likes to say, but also if you can do it on the hybrid side, we would love to have you with our coaches camp.
All right, so I think this is it. So be sure to subscribe to the Restart Recharge podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, at restartrechargepodcast.com, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RRCoachCast.
And look, we talked about it a little bit here with our social media, but we are definitely those people that if you want to talk to us, don't have the imposter syndrome. Reach out to us, tell us what you want to see or what topics you want us to discuss, and we will be more than happy to reach out and talk back with you and also put it here onto our Coach Cast. So please, please, please tell us what you want to know, and we will talk about it here on our podcast.
Absolutely. So press the restart button.
Recharge your coaching batteries and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast.
A Tech Coach Collective.
Bingo.
Yeah, I didn't hit stop recording.
Oh my goodness.